All right, everybody, welcome to Event Marketing Redefined. I am your host, CEO of Rockway Exhibits and Events, Matt Kleinrock. And today we have an awesome show for you. We have a show, how to use storytelling to bring strategic brand partnerships to life. I really love that term, strategic brand partnerships, because I think there are so many of them out there in the event marketing world. Today, I have Aiyana Parks on from Condé Nast. They are a global media company working with brands such as The New Yorker, GQ, Glamour, Vanity Fair, Architect Digest, Bon Appetit. And Aiyana, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Matt.
You got it. So what I'd love to do in the beginning, open up with some guests and event marketers like yourself is give me a little bit of your background. Tell me kind of where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, of course. So I'm from Atlanta. I went to Spelman College where I majored in English. And so I've always had like this really love and interest for storytelling from a very young age. It kind of brought me to PR and corporate communications. And then from there, I think I transitioned into an event marketing space. So this looked like me interning with Coca-Cola and being a corporate communications intern there. And then later moving into the automotive space as a corporate communications intern and really exercising, like I said, that love and passion for storytelling and being on the PR side. And then I realized that as a storyteller, you can also evolve this into creating events and event marketing. And so there I went and joined the team as an experiential marketing coordinator and later transitioned to a brand event specialist. And so going into my current role at Condé Nast, I'm actually recently just transitioned out of this position, but as an associate manager working across different brands in the lifestyle division, as you mentioned. So Bon Appetit, Architectural Digest, Condé Nast Traveler, and very excited to talk about those experiences. And I've recently taken on a new role that I'm transitioning into Delta Airlines as an event strategy global leader there. So won't hone on in a little bit about that, but I'm super excited to be joining that team. And I have a great experience that I can share with Condé as well.
That's great. Yeah, I think so. Like few things. We get Architectural Digest at our office. So many of us love to flip through it. Such a cool publication. I flew Delta yesterday. Okay. And just on the storytelling, right, and the strategic brand partnerships, this is something I'm like super passionate about. Like I think when we start talking about events, whether it's trade shows, activations, galas, just everything that kind of gets thrown and put together, I think the strategic part is interesting to me because I think a lot of times people don't understand, well, like, where's the strategy for a brand partnership and kind of how does all that marry together? And we had a really good conversation a few weeks back prior to this. And I was fascinated to learn because I really didn't know, but essentially you are kind of at Condé Nast representing these publications, and essentially other companies are coming that want to partner with them, advertise with them, do something with them. And then you are saying, okay, let us think tank this, let us have some conversations, and we're going to bring together, whether it's an event, it's an ad, getting them in the magazine and doing something experiential, say for an event that sort of aligns with both the publication and the company. And that to me truly is like strategic brand partnership and bringing that whole thing to life. So tell me a little bit about your role now and kind of maybe what like your favorite piece of it is and that storytelling and, bringing it all together.
Yeah. So like, as you mentioned at Condé Nast, as we know, Condé is this luxury publishing company that houses multiple magazines. And so in this role, I work specifically with the lifestyle division. You do have several divisions from culture, from style, but specifically with the lifestyle, you're focusing on these brands such as BA, Bon Appetit, Architectural Digest, Condé Nast Traveler, and a few more, Self Magazine, Glamour, to name a few. And so in my day-to-day role, you have different brands that are coming to us who are interested in partnering with Condé and specifically those brands that I just named to really find a synergy and bring this brand or this goal to life. So from there, in that I'm really serving as a lead on the experiential side and really communicating with the client to bring those goals or that activation to life. So whether it's a co-branded opportunity, or sometimes we'll say like a single advertiser-led event, or it can also look like a tent pole, which are existing events that happen regardless of the revenue that's coming in from an outside brand.
What would be an example of one of those? I mean, what would be an example of like one of those events, or if it's a single event, or I mean, give me an example of something.
Yeah, so for your signature tent poles, I love to use the iconic home as an example. This was actually a new tent pole that was brought about in 2021 due to COVID. And so Architectural Digest really wanted to continue having that space where they can interact with their audience and with their consumers and connecting them with designers. And so this tent pole experience was partnered in partnership with the Black Interior Design Network, BIDN for short. And what we did there was really create this virtual experience, which is known as a show house, and we rendered it online with the boundary, created a show home where 13 designers from BIDN came in and created 13 individual rooms or spaces. And so within that, although we had sponsors come in, it was a tent pole because it's an ongoing signature event that will be tied to the AD brand. And so just taking it a step further, like we're saying, the storytelling piece and integrating sponsors, we had a total of 8 sponsors. Some names that may come to mind would be like Method, and really incorporating these throughout the rooms and spaces, giving designers different sponsors to integrate. So they would, whether it was picking furniture from a sponsor, or it could be as simple as picking a soap, how would they utilize that in those spaces? And then even going further from the overall plan, we also did audio tours. So similar to what we're doing now as a podcast, we would work with the designers to pre-record an audio tour where they would take you through the house and their space that they designed, but also integrate those sponsors that were used in each space. So once again, bringing that story to life from that brand perspective, but also telling the story of the designer through the designs that they created.
That's awesome. That's great. I hear when you say words like synergy and talking about that partnership, like the first thing I think about is customers, right? And, you know, we talk about this a lot on our show, which is essentially know your audience, know your customer. So you're kind of doing this from 2 different perspectives, which I think is cool. You're trying to align, you know, obviously somebody that wants to partner with one of your lifestyle brands is interested in their audience, right? So there is a synergy there, but you really have to dig deeper to kind of find the synergy and find something that makes sense. We have multiple conversations on this about, you know, brands doing things that are tone deaf, doing things where they're really not factoring that audience in. So what are some steps you take when you're trying to create the synergy and you're trying to maximize both the publication and you say sponsor or partner coming in? You know, what are you doing from a customer research standpoint, or just discussions, or trying to really align that?
Yeah, well, I think something that's important to note from the very beginning, you kind of know your audience for each brand within those lifestyle brands that I've named. So, you know, your typical consumer for Architectural Digest will look different from Bon Appetit, where as far as like interior design versus a foodie, or sometimes it may cross over. But I think it's important to realize really what that audience looks like from each brand and how it differentiates, but also taking it a step further, and whoever that partner or sponsor is or client, so have it knowing their goals and what their audience is. Usually, if they're approaching you, there is some common ground and some synergy, but I think really seeing what those common denominators are from the very beginning will help you figure out how you can incorporate the sponsor. So like I said, with the iconic home, we had 7 different sponsors, but there was always a connection, whether it was garage living. You typically have a garage in your home. So, you know, that was easy to integrate. But I take it a step further. We didn't have a clothing brand, but you could possibly have that in a home as well, because you have closets. I think you just have to figure out what those synergies are, like I spoke about earlier, and really digesting, or not digesting, but really taking the time to see what that audience looks like.
Yeah, no, that's really sharp. And then I love even what you said about aligning goals, right? Because obviously you have, you know, we're saying like strategic partnerships, right? These are opportunities. They each have goals, right? So Bon Appetit has a goal, you know, pretty much in every event or marketing channel that they're, you know, goals for the year that they're trying to line up. Now you have someone comes in. So you're aligning not only the customer, which tends to be similar, but you're also aligning goals at a set event. How do you weigh those goals, right? How do you decide sort of, I guess, how do you blend them together, right? Because they're both trying to accomplish similar but different things.
That's a good question. I think it depends on like what the marketing campaign is too, as well. So when you're working with the brand, I
Yeah.
can use the A list as an example, which the A list is a list that comes out with Allure magazine where they're highlighting different beauty change makers in the industry.
Okay.
But keyword there was change makers, and our partner at the time was Estee Lauder, and they had their own change maker campaign that they were highlighting. Right there was a natural synergy. So just seeing what existing campaigns or upcoming campaigns that may exist, or the language or the stories that these brands are trying to tell, and if you have existing stories or marketing campaigns that are coming to life that you're trying to promote, I think is very important. I don't think originally we knew that we both had these similar campaigns, but once again, like really examining what you have coming in the works. And there it was an easy merge, I feel, to really blend the two. So though we had our A list and taking it a step further, Estee Lauder was highlighting Amanda Gorman, and Amanda Gorman was actually on our A list honoree list.
Oh, nice.
So those are key things that you look for because you don't want it to be forced. And so I really think really doing your research and your homework on the brands and the clients that you want to work with, and seeing what existing campaigns or what are those key things that they're focusing on, whether it's community, whether it's wellness, like I said, a change maker, beauty. Those are key things that you can look at from different brands on every aspect to see if you all can relate and come together to do an activation or an event.
Yeah, I think I just wrote this little note here while you were talking, because I think that's great. It's like kind of doing the research, doing the homework, understanding customers, looking for synergies that make sense, their goals, and, you know, taking the audience into consideration. It's really like research is what creates authenticity, and you're trying to create an authentic event. You're trying to create an authentic partnership that's not forced, that, you know, because people can sniff out when things are cheesy, and when things are forced, they know it doesn't feel right. So creating that authentic feel takes some work, next question for you. I would love to know about some of your favorite events that you've put together, right? Always interested. And I know our audience, you know, we get a lot of questions when we do live shows about specifics in events, and people ask all these deep dive questions. So I would love to know, like, what are some of your favorite events that you've coordinated, you've put on, you've created and worked on?
Yeah, I've mentioned this one before, but I would definitely say one of my favorite ones was the Iconic Home with Architectural Digest, mainly because this event really birthed through the pandemic, and we really wanted to see how we could continue to connect with our audience. And though Condé had did this event prior to me joining, it was the second year once I joined the team. And for me, super exciting and challenging to bring something to life that was still going to compel and make everyone feel together and want to shop and really want to interact with these designers. And so for me, that's why it was really important. And it's one of my favorite events. It also was very challenging. I think when we first experienced the pandemic, a lot of event planners or marketers, really was forced to figure out how are we going to make these activations come to life and be compelling from a virtual standpoint. And this event was really successful from like a social media standpoint, from an interaction and engagement. And so really highlighting those 13 designers also gave them a platform at a time where they weren't able to really physically come into people's homes for safety concerns. It still gave them a platform to really exercise their skill set from a design standpoint and show that they still can really hone in and be designers from a virtual aspect. So that was definitely one of my favorite events. And I can go into a deeper detail. I think I mentioned that they all were assigned different spaces or rooms. They worked with 7 individual sponsors, so it gave sponsors visibility as well.
Yeah.
And people were able to click on the different products that they use from sponsors in each room to really do a live shopping experience. So that took it another step further, and people were also able to engage and get in the mind of the designer on Instagram Live, hearing more about why they created that they did, why they incorporated these different products from sponsors. So I think it was a win-win on all fronts, from Architectural Digest, from the different designers, as well as the brands and the sponsors that were incorporated within the space.
I like the Instagram Live piece with the designers. That feels more personal to me. It feels like it's giving that one-on-one time per se. It's not, but it is. I think that's a really nice touch to add in there, because when you do things virtually, per se, you have to find ways of making that connection, because you're not getting the face-to-face conversation. You're not getting, the drink at the bar afterwards or at the event, and, you can have an intimate, discussion. So adding those little pieces in to make it personalized, I think is really smart.
Right. I feel like that project specifically has so many unique touch points from an experiential standpoint. You don't really think of show homes to be virtual, but even working with a designer or architect to create this drawing and sending it to the Boundary, who was our partner, to really bring this to life. But also, like you said, from the live standpoint, like it benefited Architectural Digest, it benefited the designers because they got more exposure, and it also benefited our partners because they were able to talk about these products that they incorporated on a live platform and really engage with consumers and the audience, asking them questions of why they did what they did, or really get in the mind. So that was definitely one of my favorite events. And I would also say another event would be going back to Allure's A-List. I mean, really highlighting those change makers, but also finding that synergy with Estee Lauder to incorporate Amanda Gorman. This was coming right off of the pandemic. And though everyone could not attend, I think we mastered creating this intimate dinner where people felt safe. They felt like they could be themselves. They could really, really exercise being change makers and having like authentic conversations, but also incorporating Estee throughout the menu design, throughout the backdrop design, as well as putting Amanda Gorman, giving her a speaking segment. She couldn't be there physically, but she pre-recorded a speech where we showed all of the honorees on a screen. So that was another favorite event of mine as well.
I love kind of like coming out of the pandemic, being able to do something like that and make people feel safe and be able to put something on when people get together. Because I would imagine at that time, people are probably starving to be together to a degree, right? Mm-hmm. And then trying to find a way to marry up and find the synergies between those two A-lists, right? I think is great. Give me a little bit of insight into your process, right? Like, I think that's kind of like, the magic behind the door. I think you'd give me one example, say like US Virgin Islands, and they want to come in and they want to work, with one of your travel leisure brands or something. And, give me a little glimpse into your process for creating events or coming up with ideas or, creating the synergy and the pitch per se.
Right. Well, creating the event, I will say, is truly a team effort. And that's one of my favorite parts of really being a part of this team and working at Condé. So really having a connection or a meeting with your pre-sale team in the very beginning phase. And this team is actually bringing you the idea and kind of telling you what the brand hopes to achieve through an RFP. And so after you digest that RFP, it looks more like a brainstorm. We're all on this call and we're trying to figure out, or we're throwing out ideas that would really compel the client to want to come on and work on this project with us. And so typically the project, it's not a clear-cut project, from the beginning. It's not a clear-cut event. This is where I would come in and see, okay, this brand, for example, Botanist Gin, they want to get this new gin out to the public. They really want people to realize that they can use this alcohol in their home on a day-to-day basis. You don't have to go to the bar. And so this looks like us thinking, okay, maybe we're doing a summer activation or a tour, a pop-up, and really throwing out the wildest ideas. It doesn't always have to make sense, but you throw out those ideas and then you go back and you examine the goals of that campaign. Like I mentioned, the marketing campaign or the strategy that they have shared in the RFP. And then from there, narrow it down, kind of come up with this pitch deck, making it a little bit more clearer and sharper. So, how many attendees are you trying to take? What type of talent are you trying to incorporate to bring in more attendees? Is this going to be a paid event, or is it going to not a paid event? I'm sorry. Or is this going to be a ticketed event, or are we just going to get a free for all? So really seeing what those key goals are on all aspects and narrowing it down in a pitch deck to share back with the client. And then from there, our post-sale team will go back, communicate what the event team has come up with, and if the client or AKA that brand is interested, they will follow up and I will join the conversation again from an ideation standpoint to really show them how we will bring it to life. And so this goes a little bit more deeper as you start bringing in new mood boards, what those brand items are going to be, whether it's a photo moment or, like we said, menu. It kind of depends what that on-site collateral is going to look like, what the activation, if they want this interactive moment. And I use the Botanist Gin as an example because this was also an event that I had a privilege of working on and producing. And they came to us and they really wanted to showcase their product in a specific way, whereas consumers really could use this at home. They could create their own cocktails. And so we did a 3 pop-up city tour, summer tour.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
LA and New York. And we incorporated a Bon Appetit celebrity chef, Brad Leone, to kind of welcome the guests. And it was a free experience, but using BA and using key people like Brad Leone really encouraged guests to come in. And then from a synergy standpoint, obviously BA being a brand that's really well known for food and beverage and covering these type of topics, it just made sense. And so that kind of puts you in the thought process about it. It's a lot of different levels to it, but like I said, it's truly an honor of being able to be in the planning process from A to Z, because it kind of exercises your mind and really pushes you to be a storyteller from beginning to end.
Yeah, I think it's cool what you said. I mean, in the sense, like everything I keep coming back to as we're talking is like, there's always a lot of ideas, but essentially it does tie back to goals and audience and what everyone's trying to accomplish and finding synergies in those things. Because at the end of the day, that's what everybody's trying to do. But, you talked about key people using, say, like an influencer from an industry, bringing people in to help sort of promote it, give it a little bit of buzz. Well, like good example is you have to bring in the right person to do that. You have to bring in a person that kind of marries it together so that when you're at this event, like it makes sense. So when it's being promoted, people are like, oh, wow, like that lines up with kind of, it's authentic and it has a very real feel to it.
Right. And one other thing that I forgot to mention, I don't know how I forgot to mention this. I mean, a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but another key component, yes, you're throwing out these wild ideas, but also really examining what your budget is and being realistic about it.
Yeah. No one wants to talk budget.
You don't want to overpromise. So I think the budget is really important, just as much as examining KPIs and marketing campaigns. You really want to know what this brand is willing to spend, how much they're really to invest in this idea, and that really shapes what you're putting out there and pitching to your clients.
Yeah. Would you tell like a younger event marketer in a sense that not talking budget and kind of overpromise, underdeliver is just really never the way to go, right?
Yep.
Have the conversation, put it out there.
Have the conversation. Ask the hard questions. I mean, you rather know this information up front than to try to deliver and then have to go back to the drawing board.
I feel like with a lot of our customers, whether it's trade show, event work, or brand activation, a lot of times we felt like way back in the day, we used to be like, what's your budget? What's your budget? What's your budget? Like we just asking. And it's like, we need it, but we kind of realized it wasn't the best approach. And we kind of started to flip the approach and say, hey, let's have a bit of a conversation first, move into it, have some discussions. And then we're saying, hey, look, do you have something set that and you're basing it off of good information and this is what it is and you can't go above it, or do you need help establishing a budget? Because I find a lot of companies and brands, when they're coming to accomplish something, they have marketing budgets and areas that they can pull from. But essentially for this specific event or events or a road tour or whatever it's going to be, they are looking for guidance. They're not going to come out and tell you and be like, hey, I'm not sure what we should spend. But if you can frame the question that way, I think you can get them to open up, have a good conversation and gain trust to say, hey, look, I'm not going to blow your budget just because I feel like it. I want to get a good budget to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, I love what you said there, guidance and also building that trust. And that's something that I've really learned in the beginning in the ideation phase. And so not just really providing one idea. A lot of times I like to provide tiers. And so I'm not really clear on what that budget is, like you said from the beginning, because sometimes clients can come and say one thing and switch it up, but really providing different options and tiers on what you can provide. And it may look a little different, but at the end of the day, it still has that same goal or approach, I think is really important.
Yeah, the tier thing is good. You can't spend like a ton of time creating everything for tiers, but you have to be able to communicate to your client or customer what the tiers look like exactly what you said. It's like, hey, like, this is kind of what 100,000 looks like. This is what 200,000 looks like. And then kind of say, hey, like, I'm not pushing you into any of these. I just want your expectations set properly. And I think you get really warm response from that, and you gain trust from people, which is really cool.
Yep.
When we spoke a couple of weeks back, you had a great quote, one that I loved, and I think a lot of people at my office and our company would really resonate with. You said it's an honor being involved in every phase of an event, the pitch, the ideation, the delivery. I know in our industries are different, but obviously they're similar. We love that too. We love that we are start to finish. It starts with a conversation and it ends with everything coming together. And that's one of our like people who work, when you ask them why they do it and why they're in this industry and this game, they're always like, oh, I just love seeing it all come together and being involved in all phases. So tell me a little bit about that quote, why you feel that way, and why it's important for event marketers.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to that storytelling piece, essentially, that's why I got into the business of doing what I do, is because one, I love interacting with others, but also being able to help achieve those goals from every aspect, whether it's working with the finance team, whether it's working with the social media team, the PR team. I think that we all share one common goal. And at the end of the day, you want that campaign, that marketing campaign, you want that event, that overall picture to be successful. So really being a part of every phase allows you not to miss information. It also allows you to stretch your mind and kind of share it. Like, social media might not be my expertise, but sometimes I think going back to that synergy piece and that storytelling piece, you may be able to drop a few gems to the social media manager that they may not thought of within that event marketing or that project at the time. So for me, it's essential and it's key to be a part of every piece. And I use the word honor because most of the times I am learning, just being in the background, a part of those conversations, even if it's not my expertise. It's just cool being in that room and soaking in that knowledge and seeing how you can really stretch yourself as a storyteller.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It is cool working with, I say all the time with my company, it takes a village. We say it all the time because it takes so many different people. So being in a room with people that bring all different things to the table when it comes to an event, and it comes to storytelling, and it comes to working with multiple brands, I think is great. And I think it's interesting. I just wrote this note because you've been talking and I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking finding storytelling for brands and these partnerships seems to me as like finding synergies and tell the story with the synergies. Almost the synergies lie in goals and audience and, product, service, culture, right? I mean, we talked a little bit last time about the culture and sort of implementing that into things, and I think a lot of times brands, they have cultures to them. They have specific audiences and certain style of people and thinkers. And, so storytelling to me really comes down to finding those synergies in those spaces and then telling the story in just a unique way, per se.
Yeah. And sometimes a brand might be doing something that you, like the current company, you're trying to do. So you may not have reached that audience yet, or you haven't accomplished that goal, but partnering and working with that brand can help you tap into that audience or tap into that goal. So I love what you said there with the culture aspect. It makes me think about the first time that Condé Nast became a sponsor of CultureCon, which is a conference used to bring together creators of color, but that was their first time sponsoring it this year. And I planned this event where we were able to really network and really tap into local creators in New York in our BA kitchen, hosting a conversation with Bon Appetit, led by our editor-in-chief, Don Davis. And so she accompanied the panel, led the panel, with 3 other leading professionals in the food space. But everyone who was invited were creators only. And Condé really wanted to tap into that creator community outside of its employees. So I think it's important what you said there, examining the culture and seeing what these brands or these partners are currently doing, because you may not, be doing it currently, but maybe you hope to get there. And so that sometimes it takes you partnering or sponsoring and really working with them to accomplish that goal.
Yeah, I don't really know how my brain hit the culture thing, but I think we had talked about it prior. And then I just noticed now, like even at my age and being on social media, it's like so many things are driven culturally that you resonate with. And I don't know if it's my age, right? If it's that I'm from the Northeast, but there's certain things that just hit me and you get this, like, you get a warm feeling. There's something there. And I know that there's things that I share with like my best friends, like things that we, grew up with, and that some people that I know just wouldn't find it funny. They wouldn't, give them that feeling. But essentially, that's a huge piece of trying to guide all this together when you tell stories. What do you think is important when it comes to like putting on a successful event? Like if you had to give somebody maybe not as much experience as you and saying, hey, you're running your first event or you're putting this whole thing together, maybe there's one or two partners involved, or maybe it's just for one brand. I mean, maybe it's just for a single brand and they work for a company and they have to throw something for them. What would be like probably 2 or 3 things that you would push them to think about or make sure that they did?
I would say, I mean, this may seem super basic, but obviously being a great communicator and really being that middle person between like your internal and your external stakeholders is sometimes what we call them. Because from my standpoint, working really closely with the editorial teams and these different brands at this publishing company, and then also trying to going back to that goals conversation, bringing those goals to life from a brand, the outside brand, you really want to make sure you're hearing both parties and that you understand what both parties are trying to accomplish. So that goes into the communication piece, but also listening. And then from a technical standpoint, I hate to come back to it, but I would say budget. You
I
have
love
to.
that you're saying the budget, though. I know it's like you don't want to say it, but you're saying it. I love it because you have to.
It was something I didn't. I don't want to say I didn't realize, but it was something I heard a lot with coming up in this industry as I continued, like move up in the positions, like be a steward. My old manager used to say, be a steward of the budget. And then you move to certain companies and they're looking at how much you're saving or just different things, what revenue you're bringing to the company. So if you're starting off, I want to encourage you to still be a steward of the budget. Sometimes seeing those numbers can be scary and starting those conversations, but you really want to be honest with the client that you're speaking with and what you can accomplish with that budget, and be honest about their goals and what they want to see happen at the event. Because I noticed so many times, like people can sometimes overpromise, and it looks worse if you're overpromising and then you have to come back and say you actually can't accomplish that due to the amount of dollars that you didn't or did.
Yeah. And it goes back to what we said earlier with the budget. I think it is great advice because budget, it's almost like being conscious of it, discussing it, being very professional with it, helping with it, it's elephant in the room sometime. Put the elephant in the room, and then it does gain that trust. They're like, okay, they start to feel like you're a partner more than your, I don't know, supplier or vendor just trying to sell them something. They're like, okay, they have my best interests in mind, right? We're on the same page. So I think that's really good advice. Okay, what I would love to close out the show with here is advice to your younger self starting out, right? So just imagine, Aiyana back in the day, getting started, you like events. And this is a little bit of something we talk about, which is event marketers, and marketers are people that, they get involved, they work for a brand or a company, they have a start. The stuff that gets thrown their way is unbelievable at companies. It's like you sign up for a job and then you end up, they're like, hey, run this trade show, or hey, we want you to work with this partner of ours and create this. And a marketer's like, I mean, you're 24, 25, or 26, and you kind of have the weight of the world on your shoulders to execute things that you don't know how really to do. Event marketing is a skill and it takes time to learn. So younger self, younger you, what would be advice? What would you tell you?
I love this question, Matt, because there's so many things that I would tell myself
Yeah.
starting off, especially as someone who I said I was always interested in storytelling and really creating these stories for a variety of audiences. I think is what brought me to the PR and communication space, and which has led me into events. But I would say, to say the least, I think when I first started off, I didn't even think about event marketing because our industry is constantly changing from, as I guess, from the perspective of storytelling. And so I lead with that and say to really be flexible. Like I said, this role did not exist in the way that I expected it, and now it's a dream role. And really post-pandemic, you see how people are really hungry for connection and being part of these type of events. So being flexible in the sense of taking on new opportunities from as a storyteller. And so it might not always look the way you pictured it, or it might not be that title that you're looking for, but really being flexible there. But then also I would say making sure that you are a part of all conversations. And so, like I said, it's an honor to hear those different conversations or be in the room. But as an event marketer, even if you're not on the social media team, if you're not on the accounts team, I've learned now looking back that all of those conversations were really pivotal to where I've made it now. And this will ultimately make you more competitive. And I think what make you stand out as an event marketer than the person next to you, because you can say like, I'm familiar with P&Ls and how to develop them. I'm familiar with creating stories or storyboards, et cetera. So really being a part of all conversations and not just being narrow-minded and being only a part of the event marketing conversations, if that makes sense. And lastly, I would say for me, I realized that really not being afraid to communicate with internal and external stakeholders. And I say not being afraid because sometimes when you're younger and you're starting off, sometimes you don't want to have certain conversations with people.
Yeah.
Their type of roles that they're in, or if they're executives. But I think that those conversations have really opened a lot of doors for me and really have landed me in the positions in the rooms that I have been in, because I've never been afraid to have those conversations and schedule one-on-ones and really see how they are developing as storytellers and what are their goals for a company or for a project, just really picking their brains and learning from them.
So I think those are really good. I mean, the one of being flexible, I think is good advice to any younger person, because you're saying like, you don't know what you don't know, be flexible, dive into stuff, because things are going to change. Things are going to happen. You have to have this flexibility to adjust, this flexibility to know that things are not always going to be the same. The opportunity to learn all facets is something I think might have been your best answer for me, because I'm a firm believer in that in business. Is a lot of times younger people coming into organizations, whether big or small, they're coming in and like, okay, this is my role. And they think that's what they're going to be doing. But what they don't understand is that businesses are a big beast and they need sharp people to solve problems and take things on. So if you're a younger person, learn all the facets. And when something comes up, raise your hand and jump to it. The right people, to what you said, Aiyana, about having those conversations, they notice people like that. They notice people that are raising their hand saying, hey, I got it. Like, I've watched this before. I've been they will give it to you. And then the last piece about communication, this is my favorite one too, but they're really good. It is like, you have to communicate, say what you're feeling, just say it the right way, ask the questions, put it out there. And I think always in business, I'm a believer is that there's some really crappy people out there, but there's also a lot of great people out there, and you'll find the right people who notice you when you communicate well, when you're flexible, and when you learn all facets of the business. The right leadership, the right senior people will seek those younger people out. Aiyana, you're a wealth of knowledge. This was great. I really enjoyed having you on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You're a wealth of knowledge as well. And this is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a cool conversation. The more that we have with people like yourself, it's amazing, this event marketer community, how so many people do so many different things. For example, when we first had spoke, I kind of knew what you did, but I wasn't 100% sure. And then when we started talking about it, I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. Like, that is such a cool thing to be able to take, say a publication or a brand and have someone that wants to advertise, partner, and say, okay, what does this look like to make this work? I think it's a very cool thing. Everybody who joined us, Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening in. Thank you, Aiyana. This is Event Marketing Redefined. I'm your host, Matt Kleinrock, CEO of Rockway Exhibits, and we will catch you next time. Aiyana, thank you so much.
Thank you.